Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alliance for Water Efficiency webinar. Today, we'll be talking about smart connected plumbing, innovations targeting leaks in the home and in the utility system. We're very pleased today to be offering you this webinar with three Alliance for Water Efficiency members who have technologies that they will be demonstrating to you today. My name is Marianne Dickinson, and I have the pleasure of moderating this webinar. But before we start, just want to give you a little bit of instruction and welcome. As you know, the webinar will be 60 minutes long. We might go a little bit over if you have a lot of questions, because we want you to have questions. We'd like you to participate. If you're hearing my voice, you've already figured out the audio. It can either be through your telephone or your computer microphone and speakers. Either one will work with GoToWebinar. But know that the webinar phone line will be muted. We mute our participants during the presentation because we are live recording it. We are making the recording available for you to look at in the future and watch in the future. And when we mute the participants, it means that we cut out the coffee cup noise and the paper rattling and the, surprise visitors in your office and the phone ringing. Those were all issues we had with our early webinar recordings that we have decided we want to avoid for the future. We'd like a clean recording. But that doesn't mean we don't want you to participate. We very much want you to participate. And you can type in questions throughout the webinar. You type them in the dialog box, which you can access in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You should see an orange rectangle with a white arrow. If you click on it, it will open up a dialog box where you can see you can type your questions. And Liam will be assembling questions throughout the webinar and will be answering them in the order that they were received by the speakers. So we'll do all the questions at the end of the webinar. So here is our speaker list for the day. We're very pleased to introduce David Johnson from Reza Tech, Ashlyn Carlson and Gabriel Halimi from Flow Technologies, and Eric Adler from Flume. We will hear from these three companies today about their technologies and their solutions, and we're very pleased to be showcasing this issue today. Why are we doing this? Well, why do leaks matter? They matter quite a bit. In the distribution system, in the utility distribution system, real losses are a serious problem. There's an estimate of 267,000 water main breaks per year in the United States alone, costing $2.8 trillion or more in lost utility revenue. These statistics come from EPA's report on this subject. We know the break rates are increasing, and they're increasing by high percentages, 27% across the US and Canada between the years of 2012 and 2018, again from another report done by Utah State University. And we know that certain types of pipe materials break up more than others. Cast iron and asbestos cement pipe, those breaks make up 41% of water mains in the United States and Canada, and those breaks increased by more than 40% during that same time period. So these are problem issues for water utility distribution system operators, and they need help in addressing the rising tide of real losses in the system. But it's not just the utility system, it's the residential household as well. We are finding in the residential end use studies that have been done by the Water Research Foundation over the years that 12% or 17 gallons per household per day of water use inside the home is attributed to leaks. And this percentage is a high percentage. It's only behind the main indoor household water uses that we typically think of as high water using devices, toilet, shower head, faucet, and clothes washer. Leaks are becoming an issue that water utilities are increasingly spending more time trying to figure out how they address it. It saves the customer money and it saves the utility water supply as well. So these are issues that we need help in addressing. So we know that we've had traditional programs that we've used over the years. The traditional approaches, of course, always work, but now new technologies are going to help those traditional approaches. In water loss control, you've got the M36 manual and other policies from the International Water Association and AWWA. You've got equipment like acoustic loggers. You've got programs like pressure management and leak component analysis. And all of that can be helped and benefited and augmented by doing analysis and using technologies that will help prioritize the maintenance in certain parts of the system and reduce operational costs. Similarly, on the residential side, we've always educated the consumer on, looking for your leaks. We've instituted smart meters and customer portals to help them track their water usage. But now, the new technologies are helping us provide much more information on real-time water use to help alert and influence the customer so that they can modify their behavior, to automate how leak control can come about. And so these are the types of programs that we want to talk to you about today. We want to show you these new technologies and help you understand how important they are going to be in your water conservation and efficiency programs. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Reza Tech to talk to us about their geospatial AI for network operations.
Thank you very much, Marianne, and thank you very much to all those attending. This is one of our biggest solutions, and I'll broaden that component in a second. Marianne has done a great job of introducing the problems that we are facing as an industry. Could we go to the next slide, please? The Reza Tech is a big data geoanalytics company, and we focus on delivering solutions to multiple sectors. The infrastructure sector, specifically water infrastructure, has been a big focus of ours, and ultimately providing solutions to this market is what we're going to be talking about today. That just as a very quick overview as to how we and what we do as a day-to-day. Our business is focused on delivering geospatial solutions to global problems. Our vectors, or sorry, the verticals that we service, that being agriculture, forestry. Down the bottom of the image there, you'll see that we've got a number of icons. Those all represent a vertical that we support. Each of those has a relationship to infrastructure. So understanding water quality, how that feeds into your pipe network, does influence how your infrastructure is going to be either deteriorating, degrading, or in fact what you are going to be having coming out the other end. Forestry, where we have influencing vegetation that will actually impact your infrastructure, whether it be through root movement or in fact ingress and all the other problems that come through from that. Likewise, agriculture and infrastructure, as I've noted here, is one of our primary verticals. So the way in which Reza Tech aggregates its data is we use satellite data as one of our primary components. We pull satellite data as well as a number of other data sources. We pull these together and build relationships to understand what's happening across an entire landscape, whether it be specifically for a network of a utility, or specifically zoning in within a network to look at what is going on across that section. Now we use this by applying artificial intelligence, so using machine learning and pattern recognition algorithms to build those relationships and ultimately then present that back in a geospatial context across your utility, to understand where to focus your efforts and to understand what is actually going on across your infrastructure, and ultimately presenting that back in a usable format, whether it be through our web portal or whether it be through an interaction of email, so consuming it in a shapefile, so a geospatial component, or an XYZ through Excel. Again, this is a solution which has been applied across many verticals, as I noted: water quality, forestry. All of those are very similar in terms of process, and ultimately and they all have that relationship with each other. Next slide, please. So as we are a geospatial analytics company, and the focus of what we're talking here is on water infrastructure, our proposition is always started off, and the conversation has always started off with non-revenue water as the primary focus. Now, utilities have different states of maturity. Some utilities have a very low non-revenue water, so less than 10%, which is fantastic. And the business driver there is purely to maintain that level of water loss. Conversely, some utilities have in excess of 50%. We are a global reach as a company, so we deal with those extremes, and each of those those maturities have different business drivers, as I noted, but they all fundamentally are looking for the same thing, which is to understand how best to tackle the problem of maintaining your infrastructure. So our elevator pitch really, and our solution is, we across your entire network, across 100% of a utilities network, we will define the highest 30% of that network at risk of failure. And within that highest 30% of the network that is at risk of failure, we will define and conclusively demonstrate that there is 70% of the leakage contained within that. Now, those stats we can back up, and we'll walk through those very shortly in this presentation. But ultimately, the driver behind those statistics and how we actually present that back is down to understanding what is being observed across the landscape and the relationships of the landscape and external influences and internal influences from a geospatial context. And really having that geospatial component adds significant weight to where to focus your people and what the actual outcomes look like. So really this, if you're thinking about how this translates to a win and value to you as the client, ultimately it is a prioritization of investment. So it comes down to monetary value, but it also it breathes new life into investments which you've already made before. And so, for example, having an understanding of where your technology is deployed across an entire network, it may well be that you can redeploy technology. Each of those components we can run through in some detail in a minute, but ultimately having that appreciation and being able to reinvest money which has already been spent, there's significant benefit there. So can we go to the next slide, please? So the way in which we execute this, Reza Tech's model is very much about defining again that geospatial component, but looking at through the lens of, okay, what's happening from the outside, what is happening as a extrinsic, so the global data sets, as you can see looking on the left side of this diagram, we pull together data sets from satellite data, as well as combining that with other data sets of soils, weather, topography, as you know, so we get an appreciation of what is going on at a single location, but equally we understand what the components that are driving this are. So from a satellite perspective, just very briefly running through each of those, from the satellite data, for this solution, we typically look at terrain motion, so where the ground is moving. We use radar data to define that. So having data that goes back to 2016, we can look at a trend of activity on a specific location on the ground, and see how things have moved across that terrain, so whether it's going up or down. Likewise, we look at vegetation, proximity of vegetation, rooted vegetation to your infrastructure, as well as a number of other data sets. So soils, not only the classification of soil, but understanding the pH, the organic material, etc. Weathers, topography, all of those components will influence the externals to or external influences to your infrastructure. Likewise, having an appreciation of what is physically in said space, understanding that in a location you have a 16-inch steel pipeline which is sitting in those specific clay soils, for example. Understanding those internal components is very important too. So we pull that information together and really build the relationships of where we've seen failure by understanding historic events. So understanding where you have seen historic failure or leakage in the past then translates and building that using that as the glue to understand that in a location on said date, all of these relationships and all of these factors presented in a signature of this activity. So the machine learning and the AI component of this pools all of this together to then present the pipeline likelihood of failure. Can we move to the next slide, please? So understanding across your entire network where your likelihood of failure is, and we present that back in a geospatial component, as I noted, which at a single look, it's really a good lens to get an appreciation of where you should be focusing your efforts. So what you see is our web portal, our interface, and how so you can see the distribution of red being high risk, high likelihood of failure, and blue being least likelihood of failure. So each, having that information drives that decision making beyond this. Can we go to the next slide, please? To date, what we've seen from an effectiveness position is, as I was noting, the proportions of leakage we will see within over your entire 100% of your network. We will present you back based on a certain criteria of assessment, and that assessment is quite straightforward. We train our models on 3 years worth of historic data. This allows us to present to you what we would expect the value to look like upfront. That is, we train our models on 2 years. So for example, 2016, 2017, and 2018, we will train our models upfront on 2 years of data, ask you as a client to hold back 2018. We will present the results from 2 years of training. We will then overlay, once we've presented you those results, we'll overlay 2018 data and see what that correlation looks like. Across the world, this is Australia, France, Canada, to name a few, we've aggregated these results, and multiple studies within those have come back, and this is the resulting aggregation of those results. Typically within the first 20% of highest risk, we will demonstrate 50% of your leakage or in excess of. Likewise, that 30%, we will demonstrate 70% of your leakage. So the results speak for themselves, and we demonstrate this upfront before we move into an active program of annual subscription or using this as an active program of management and use. Can we go to the next slide, please? So again, the use cases for this is deployment or focusing of efforts. So I appreciate I have probably reached the end of my time, but I'll just very quickly go through these. Based on the maturity of a business, effectively, and where you are, some businesses, as I was saying, or utilities at the higher end of maturity, with low non-revenue water, effectively they're going to be looking at where to invest in upgrading their infrastructure. This is a mechanism to support that. A number of conversations we have quite frequently is we've dug up these pipes and they are fantastic. Why are we digging them up? And it's simply based on old metrics or old human bias of this material is degrading at this rate. As Marianne mentioned before, there is very much a focus on the material and age, as opposed to really understanding the situational component of it. So there's a lot more to consider, and really this helps drive that understanding. So 1 is upgrade, 2 is logger deployment, and really where you can redistribute technology, and ultimately survey prioritization as a focus. I think that is me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave. And I know you'll probably have questions. We're going to save them until the end of the presentation when we hear from all three. And so stay tuned with us. I know we've had a little bit of an issue with your audio, so I'm hoping that this is going to straighten out a little bit when we get to the question period. So at this point, I'd like to move on to Flow by Moen and ask Gabriel and Ashlyn to join us for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Marianne. This is Gabe Halimi. I'm joined by Ashlyn Carlson here next to me. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Flow Technologies based in Los Angeles. Flow is a water monitoring and control system for the home. We proactively monitor all three of the fluid mechanical elements of the water system, which is flow, temperature, and pressure, to learn water habits of people and identify when there are leaks and vulnerabilities that lead to leaks to meet our mission, which is to prevent loss, one drip at a time. Before I jump into my presentation, I thought maybe it would be helpful if I give a little bit of a background just on who we are and how we got here. And I think that provides a little bit of context to our approach to these problems. We started the company as a father-son team. My father is, Henry is sort of what we like to call him in the office, is a mad scientist of plumbing. He's been in the plumbing space for over 30 years. He's invented a number of different solutions. He's a mechanical engineer by trade, but he worked very closely with the insurance industry, studying water failures for over 10 years. During that time, we also had a catastrophic water damage claim in our own home as a result of a plumbing failure where I lived in a hotel for over 6 weeks because of this water failure. Had a huge impact on our family. And living in Los Angeles, one of the things that we realized was not only is water damage in homes a big problem because of the inconvenience, we also lose a lot of our water due to leaks. The first few slides here of our presentation is a lot of kind of statistics, so we'll go through this quickly and then we'll get to the meat of what our technology does. So we all know that water is our most precious resource. It's a vital resource. We can go to the next slide. We skipped a couple here, but it's fine. It's okay, Marianne. Let's just keep moving. However, the availability of water, you know, there are a lot of threats to it globally. Let's go to the next slide.
Hello? Gabriel, are you there?
Yeah, can you still hear us?
You seem to have lost audio.
Marianne, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Gabe.
Okay. Well, it's unfortunate that Marianne can't hear us. So,
okay, now I hear you. There you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Great. Can we could go to the next slide, Marianne? By 2050, global water demand will increase by another 30%, and billions of people are going to be in areas where water is going to be very scarce. We can go to the next slide. And you guys have already seen this statistic. On average, about 17 gallons of water per day per home are lost due to leaks. It's around 12 to 13% of total household water. We can go to the next slide. And the total water lost, again, this is probably no surprise to you guys, over 1 trillion gallons of water is lost in our homes every year. And that's enough water to supply LA, Chicago, and Miami. You can go to the next slide. So what a lot of you may not know, though, is that this same water that's lost in our homes, that's leaks, is also a huge problem from a water to damage standpoint. Water damage in our homes as a result of plumbing failures is 6 times more likely to lead to an insurance claim than fire, and 5 times more likely than theft. It's about 25% of all homeowners insurance claims every year. We can go to the next slide. And so when you look at that total damage that's being caused, it's over $13 billion every year that water leaking in our homes is causing damage. Now, where we are focused is, as a company, part of our business model is to work with the insurance industry to also get the insurance industry to provide incentives to homeowners to adopt our technology to help prevent the water damage. And some of two of the largest insurance companies in the country are but investors. We have many active pilots with the insurance industry, and most of them now provide premium discounts to have our technology installed. And so the average claim you see is about $8,000, and 40% of homeowners over the life of their that home will have water damage at some point. So it is a very common occurrence. It's about 2% of homes every year across the US that file a homeowner's insurance claim related to a plumbing failure. You can go to the next slide. So our technology. So we have a water monitoring and control device that installs on the main water supply line to a home. That device monitors the pressure, temperature, and flow of the water. It learns all of the habits of people in the home. So when there is a leak, and we can identify leaks as small as a drop of water a minute, all the way up to pipe failures, we can send notifications to the homeowner. We can automatically shut off the water. The homeowner can turn on and turn off their water whenever they would like, or feel that it's necessary. And they can also learn a tremendous amount about their water usage through their app. Can we go to the next slide? So everyone has visibility into how this works. The device is professionally installed on the main water supply line. This is on the homeowner's side of the water line. Not on the utilities side. So after the water meter, after the water shut off going into the home, and hopefully after the pressure regulator. So the device is monitoring the effectiveness of the pressure regulator working. It's also looking at the temperature of water going into the home. And this one device captures all of the water data. Now, the important thing, Marion, can you go to the next slide? I think the next slide covers my point. Yeah, so one of the features of the device is you can get real-time data on how you're using your water in your home. The reason that pressure and temperature is really important, I started by saying that we're really focused on preventing loss in people's homes, and part of how we do that is we try to prevent leaks from even happening in the first place. Part of the experience that my father had when working with the insurance industry is that he realized that you can actually prevent a lot of these leaks that we see through proactive monitoring of the water system. So part of what we do is we monitor, for example, the pressure of the water line, because water pressure in homes is actually very similar to blood pressure in your body. If you have high blood pressure for long periods of time, that's what will actually cause your heart to fail, other organs, veins and arteries working too hard. And the same is true for our home water systems. When we have high water pressure for long periods of time, that's what actually causes many of the pipe burst, appliance failures, fixtures leaking. That's a huge part of the root cause. And also in many areas, also the temperature can be a root cause. When you have water at freezing temperatures for periods of time, the water in the pipe can actually expand, thereby creating a pressure issue and causing pipes to burst. So we're proactively monitoring for all of these different potential failures, as well as water running for too long or too high of flow rates. We really detect all kinds of leaks and all kinds of vulnerabilities, and then we help people resolve those, hopefully before there is significant water that's lost or the damage resulting to the home. If you can go to the next slide. So the technology overall is proactive. We're doing proactive monitoring of the home. It's comprehensive because we're catching all leaks, no matter how small. Every day we can definitively tell the homeowner whether or not they have a leak in their home, and whether or not there's a vulnerability that could cause a leak. In the event that there is a leak and it's potentially catastrophic, the homeowner can shut off the water, or we can shut off the water automatically. We have support available to help homeowners troubleshoot their leaks and actually resolve them. So we get a plumber involved very early because a plumber is necessary to actually install the technology. And that same plumber can become like a plumber of record for that home, and we can send that plumber back out when the homeowner needs any kind of further support. And overall, when you look at the size of the overall problem, both from from a homeowner's perspective, the cost of that water when they go into higher tiers if they have leaks and don't know about it, and also the kind of insurance savings they can get and avoiding having to pay out claims, it's a very attainable but technology that does pay for itself. We can go to the next slide. So the homeowner can get enhanced kind of water data to also learn more about how they're using their water in their home. They can set up a conservation goals, and so they learn a lot about their own water usage through the app. On a monthly basis, we send up comparisons to how they're using their water versus other people who have flow in their home. So we provide a lot of data to help kind of nudge people in savings, and Aisling will talk about that in a minute. We also, as part of our Flow Protect program, we also give a deductible reimbursement guarantee. So just kind of to help frame, how we're actually providing value to homeowners. We'll actually guarantee that people will not have water damage by having our system installed, and so we quite literally put our money where our mouth is when it comes to preventing water damage and leaks in homes. If we can go to the next slide. So here's where I'll ask Aisling to jump in and to talk a little bit about some of the pilots that we've done with water utilities.
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to connect with you all. So I think the previous slide was an interesting one to come before this, because when you look at some of the names on this slide, so the Nevada Water Authority, Water Now Alliance, for example, part of the reason that they are interested in partnering with us is because of the richness of the data that we are producing and collecting, which is previously untapped data, and at such a granular, real-time level that it's very, very interesting from their perspective in terms of learning about consumers and how they use water in the home, with a view to trying to promote water conservation. Could you go to the next slide, please, Marianne? So what we wanted to show you with this slide is really just a little bit of insight to some of the interesting data that we're able to collect from day one of installing Flow in homes. So this is a pilot that we're currently running in Southern California with an insurance company. It's interesting to note that 48% of the homes had high pressure due to a broken pressure regulating valve. 24% of the homes had broken shutoff valves. So you can imagine in the scenario where you have a leak and you can't even turn off the water to the home, that'd be incredibly frustrating. And 10% of those shutoff valves were actually leaking themselves. So already from the day one of installing Flow, you're starting to collect some really interesting data on plumbing issues in properties.
And this is not even including all the leaks that were actually happening in the home as well. Like this is just the external stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to the next slide, please, Marianne. So this is exactly what Gabe is talking about. So 39% of homes have leaks. So when Flow gets installed, as Gabe talked about earlier, on Flow gets installed, we run what we call a health test immediately, and that is able to identify leaks anywhere downstream of the device. So in homes where we install Flow, 39% of them are seeing a leak detected from day one. Now, I think the really interesting thing to know is that when we run a health test 30 days later, so on day 30 post installation of Flow, 33% of homes are passing their health test, which means we're seeing a 15% drop in leaks in homes after flow was being installed. So I think the learning from that is that, one, we're equipping homeowners with the knowledge, first of all, to understand their plumbing, so knowledge that they previously never had insight into, and that we're actually seeing them take action. They are proactively going out and fixing leaks that are being identified in their property. I think what we would love to see is how we might be able to work further with utilities in order to push that number even further. We'd love to see all of those leaks being fixed within 30 days of them being detected. So however we can partner with utilities to further educate homeowners and work with them to drive down that number would be fantastic.
Also, and I also don't have a slide on this, but we've seen that with homes that have high pressure, we've sent them proactive kind of notifications, and we actually see a significant amount of our homeowners kind of take action. Or again, that's just areas where we're helping to prevent leaks. About 13% of the homes on our platform today still have a high water pressure, but that's come down from something like, I think it was the 25% at some point. So we are helping homeowners kind of drive down that.
Next slide, please, Marianne.
And so overall, over our, since we've launched the company about 15, 16 months ago, we have actually helped save homeowners over 10 million gallons of water. And that's just looking at the statistics on what the average home leaks, and because we can tell definitively when our homes have leaks and when they don't, and also based on how many times we've shut off the water automatically in the event of kind of critical stuff, pretty conservatively, that's already saved over to 10 million gallons of water. But now that we've kind of partnered with Moen and we're reaching nationwide to distribution in Home Depot, we are seeing the technology get adopted in more and more homes, and so this number is increasing fast, which we're very proud of. Can we go to the next slide, Marianne? I think it's the last slide.
Yeah, this is the last slide. So as we look forward and we think about what's next for Flow, one of the things that we're thinking about incorporating into our product is behavioral nudge theory. And for those that don't know what that is, nudge is a concept in behavioral science that that proposes positive reinforcement and indirect suggestions as a way to influence behavior.
I'm sorry, we just got a notice that we're over our time. So
yeah.
So just to wrap up.
Yeah, so I mean, in short, what we want to do is we want to see how we can work with utilities to incorporate real-time water pricing data into our app in order to try and promote water conservation, as well as gamify the experience for consumers so that they can compare data on how much water they're using every day to their neighbors, and that might, we believe, change their patterns of consumption, hopefully to drive down consumption.
And that's it from us. I'm sorry we ran over our time, but thank you all.
Thank you very much, Gabe and Ashlyn. Thank you. We really appreciate the presentation, and I'm sure you'll have questions, which we'll move to once we do our final presentation. We'll hear from Eric Adler about Flume.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Adler, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Flume. Marianne, thank you so much for passing the mic over to me. And at Flume, what we've developed here is an intelligent water usage platform for the homeowner, utilities, and insurance companies. Gabe did a great job kind of defining some of the problems in this space, and you're definitely going to see some overlap in the problem that we're trying to solve. We're using a different approach to the technology, which I'll talk about here in a minute, but I wanted to reiterate kind of the challenge we're facing and the problem we're experiencing in the industry. So Marianne, if you could move to the next slide, that'd be great. We started this company, the initial idea started back in about 2015, and what we saw is this massive drought that was occurring not just in California, but much of the Southwest. And it was an issue that no one really knew how to solve because there was no data. The source of the problem we were really looking at is that consumers, utilities, no one had real-time data on what was going on and how much water was being used in homes. And we wanted to figure out a way to solve that with an easy to install, low cost package. What happened when someone doesn't have data is that if you have a leak in your home or you're trying to conserve water, you have no ability to take action, right? If you have nothing telling you how much is being used, you can't actually get the feedback you need to do something about it. And if you have a leak, you're not going to know for a month or 2 months down the road, which results in high water bills that can result in significant damage to the home, and an overall very unpleasant experience, as well as massive amounts of water being wasted, right? So Marian, if you could switch to the next slide here. So what we did in terms of actually developing the technology is we focused on piggybacking off of infrastructure that already exists. If you get a water bill from your city, then of course you have a water meter attached to your home. And what we did is we just developed a sensor that could go directly on the side of the existing meter. Notoriously, these meters were only providing data to the utility. The utility would gather that data and then provide that to the homeowner once per month. Which again, there wasn't that feedback loop there. So now with our sensor on there, we're able to stream real-time data to multiple parties. So it can go on the side of the meter. No plumber has to come out to install it. It's a very low-cost sensor. It's only $199 retail price. And now with that sensor on there, we're reading all the movement inside of that meter, analyzing the data, sending it to the consumer, and also sending it to the utility as well. Marian, you could switch the slides there. So with this information now, so we're actually focusing on just the major solution as a whole here. So this is how we kind of picture Flume. We really are the aggregator of all water usage data across the country. In specific regions, you can imagine that we have these, these data collectors, which are our sensors all over a city. We're gathering that data in real time. We're sending it to our cloud, and then we're analyzing that and presenting it to a variety of different customers. It's not necessarily just the homeowner that wants this data, but the utility can access this data in real time. Insurance companies, like Gabe mentioned before, are also very interested in ensuring that their customers don't have damaging leaks on their home. So they want to know what's going on as well. Irrigation companies out there are always looking to see, are there breaks in the irrigation system? Do we have a burst pipe in zone 1, 2, or 3? And they generally do not have any way of gathering that data until now. Similarly, there's other companies out there that are looking for data on how much water is being used by different appliances in the home. And this is a way we can also share that data and let them know that certain faucets or certain appliances are using a certain amount of water while they're run in the home. And finally here, of course, the consumer has access to this information. It can use that data to change their habits, protect their home, reduce their bill, etc. Marianne, next slide, please. So in the app, you can do all sorts of very interesting things. And we have homeowners that are using this app constantly every day to monitor all sorts of things in their home. When we originally started the company, we were thinking that people would just check this occasionally to see how much water is being used, or maybe use it as a security system in some ways for their water to make sure that they don't have a leak or a burst pipe. But we hear all sorts of funny stories about, dads yelling at their kids for taking 20-minute showers, or a situation where parents knew that their kid did not go to work that day because you saw water usage throughout the entire day at the home. There's a lot of things you can actually infer from this data. The most important piece is, of course, monitoring your water usage in real time, seeing what's going on, and taking action on that information. And then if you're a homeowner that just wants to protect your home from leaks as well, you can use this as basically a security system for your home and get notified in the event that any leak is occurring in the house. Finally, customers can set goals and custom alerts. So if they only want to spend a certain amount of money that month, they can actually input how many gallons they want to use for that month and get notified as they approach that limit. So there's a lot of very interesting data that's actually being presented to our customer base. Marianne, next slide. And one of the things that I really want to focus on here is, we often get the question, and I think utilities ask this question too, is, do people really care? Do they use the product? Do they really want to see what's going on? And the answer is yes. With our app and with our product installed, we're seeing a very high engagement. On average, we have people logging in and checking the app about once every 2 days. So they're very engaged in what's going on. It's this information they've never been able to see before. Notoriously, these customers are getting a bill once a month and they get one data point. So now to be able to see how much their shower just used, or how much their toilet's using, or know their irrigation was just responsible for 80% of their overall daily usage, that's really interesting information to them and something that they're really tapped into and want to get more of. So it's pretty exciting to see how active our customer base is and how much they're really valuing the product. Next slide, please. So there's not just the component here for the homeowner, but of course there's this other piece, which is the Flume Portal that's available to a variety of different customers. This is kind of showing what the portal looks like for a utility partner. So right now the utility can see across all homes that have Flume installed exactly how much water is being used per day. And then Marianne, if we move forward to one more slide. And here we can actually dive down, click on an individual user, and then really focus on the data. So you can see day by day exactly how much water that individual user is using. You can dive into another subset of data and see on the hourly or even minute by minute usage data for that home. And you can also get notified of different issues that are happening with this event history. So you can see that there was a high flow of leak, whether or not it's been resolved, exactly what date and time that was at, and make sure customers are actually taking action to resolve problems that are happening in the home. Next slide, please. And here's a pretty interesting concept where you can actually see, let's say we have 1,000 units across the utility. You can now see exactly who are the top water users in real time. This could be caused by a broken irrigation pipe. It could be caused purely by behavior of that customer, but you can quickly organize that data on a day-by-day basis and see who's responsible for top usage and how you can potentially help them take action to reduce their consumption as well as lower their bill. So it's really a win-win here for both the consumer and the utility. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show this, which is just our sensors across the entire country. We've been able to develop this nationwide presence because we're available on Amazon and we have this direct consumer channel available for anyone in the country. However, what's really interesting is that I think it's very interesting that you can have this nationwide presence and we have units across 43 states, but what's more interesting is when you really partner with a water utility and focus on a program in a specific region. Next slide, please, Marianne. And here's an example of what it looks like in a couple districts that we've partnered with. When we work with that utility, we launch a rebate program, generally is how we do it. And then that utility subsidizes the product, co-markets Flume to their customers. And you can see this really kind of local spread of sensors all over a specific region. And this is where the data gets incredibly rich and interesting, and you start seeing consumer behavior change because now neighbors in the region are also using the product. And this is what our real focus is partnering with utility companies and doing these region-specific rollouts. Next slide, please. So one thing I wanted to talk about was a certain case study with a utility down in northern San Diego County called Rainbow Water. This was a utility that decided to put our product on about 50 homes for a 6-month period of time to see if we could really perform. And this was a challenging area where the water meters were sometimes 1,500 feet away from the home, yet we had a strong signal. We're able to get that information in real time. And the results were pretty incredible. I mean, these numbers are not what you expect to see, but they were very, very high. So 63% of our customers in that short amount of time discovered leaks on their property. And some of these leaks were, maybe it was a pool filler, maybe it was a toilet leaking, but we had other ones that were hundreds of gallons per hour leaks caused by irrigation lines that were broken. You had pools that were overflowing. You had all sorts of different situations where leaks were discovered and they were quickly fixed, which resulted in thousands, I mean, tens of thousands of gallons of water being saved, as well as, you know, significantly reduced water bills for these customers and a very happy customer base. So 88% of these customers actually said they'd changed their water usage habits, and we could look at the data ourselves and see their water usage change over that 6-month period. And what was most exciting about it is the vast majority, I mean, 96% of the customers that use this product said they would recommend it to a friend, which is phenomenal for us to see. Next slide, please. So this year, you know, we're really focused on utility partnerships all over the country. This is just a handful of our current utility customers: Rainbow, San Antonio Water, East Bay Mud, Harupa, Southern Nevada, Contra Costa. This is just a list of 6, but we have many others that we have established relationships with, not just on the West Coast, but across the entire country. And we're looking forward to working with them to provide conservation data, help customers find leaks, and really provide value in these districts. Next slide, please. So finally, I just wanted to provide an offer for anyone that's watching this and listening to this webinar. So if you want to find out more information, you can, of course, go to our website at flumetech.com. You can actually get a 10% discount on the product right now by just typing in AWE member on the checkout page. And I think one of the really interesting things to look at is if you go on Amazon, you can read our customer reviews. There's nothing more truthful than Amazon for, you know, the customer experience and what they think about the product. And we have a pretty phenomenal, exuberant customer base on there right now that loves to talk about their experience and how we've helped them solve issues. So thank you very much. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to shoot me an email at eric@flumetech.com as well.
Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate it. And hopefully you're all typing in your questions. We are very interested in hearing what you might want to know from our distinguished presenters. Again, you can type them right into the dialog box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And while you're doing that, let me just announce that a PDF of this presentation and a link for the recorded webinar will be available in a few days and will be posted on the AWE website and the AWE webinars section of the resource library. And if you think of questions after this webinar is over, we still will be happy to get answers for you. Just email Liam at a4we.org and we will get the question to the right presenter for your answer. And then lastly, our next webinar we hope you will join us for will be June 4th at 1 o'clock Central. It'll be our combination webinar that we do on a quarterly basis with the Environmental Protection Agency. And this topic on June 4th will be the nexus between water efficiency and stormwater, and will feature Deb Lane of the City of Santa Rosa. Registration is already open for the webinar, so just go to our calendar section of our website and you can click in and register right now. So at this point, I think we're ready for our questions. Liam, what do we have?
All right, yeah, a number of questions coming in. First one is the flow device installed in the water supply line or does it wrap around?
It installs in line on the water supply line, so it does need to be professionally installed by a plumber on the homeowner side of the line. We do have a number of heavy DIYers that install it themselves, but because we're cutting into the main line, we strongly recommend a professional installation. It is a big trade-off, but having that pressure data, the temperature data, and being able to actually shut off the water is what you're getting in a return.
All right. Can flow be used in apartment complexes and businesses?
It can. We are installed on a number of apartment buildings. As long as there's a separate water supply line going into the unit, we can be installed. Just keep in mind, there's a couple of things that you need. You need Wi-Fi, you need power, and you need access to the main water supply line. We're also in the middle of a beta program where we're releasing a larger device, a 1 1/4 inch device, which is actually also designed for light commercial applications. So if there's any interest in that, just feel free to shoot me an email at g@neatflow.com flume.com, and happy to walk anyone through any of those specifics.
All right. How does Flow and/or Flume technology differ from AMI systems that offer a customer portal?
I'll let my friend Eric cover that one. Eric, but you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting looking at the AMI space. We see a real opportunity here. We see many cities that are looking at transitioning over to AMI, but it's generally a very big hurdle to do so, and very expensive. So what we're kind of looking at is that, generally with AMI, there's really only about 10% of customers in that district that want real-time data. And what we're seeing is that with our solution, instead of switching an entire city over to AMI, you could actually work with Flume, for example, partner with that city and offer a rebated, subsidized product to the customer base that's really focused on gathering that real-time data, instead of having to switch out every meter in the entire city. Also, one of the main differences between Flume and AMI is that with AMI, you're generally only sending data off once per day. That can be broken down to maybe 15-minute buckets, but you're only getting that data point every 24 hours. With Flume, you're getting data every 30 seconds, so it's basically real time for those customers. And when you see that level of granular data, you can understand, your shower usage, your toilet usage, your irrigation usage. And without that type of granular data, it's very hard to do. So that is how we differ from AMI. And yeah, happy to answer any additional questions if you would like. You can feel free to email me after this as well.
The far majority of that also applies to Flow. We also, our data is every second that it's being reported to the cloud, so it's actually real time and people have that dashboard. But yeah, all of the other things that Eric shared also would apply to Flow in terms of the differences with AMI as well. Thanks, Eric, for covering that one.
Yeah.
All right. Question for David at Reza Tech. Has Reza Tech found a trend about which global and local attributes have been the most significant factors impacting the likelihood of failure?
That's a very good point, and one we do come to discuss quite frequently. Ultimately, the beauty of this technology is that it is based on the merits of that specific utility and that specific location in its own entirety. So all the historic information that's used to train the artificial intelligence ultimately builds a picture of the relationships and the dynamic relationships of that across that network. So and what we've seen is a number of clients who've got multiple so owner-operator clients who've got multiple networks in different geographies around a single country, some in highlands, some in lowlands, some in marshy, completely different locations. The outputs and the contributing factors to failure are variable, purely because of that dynamic nature of each individual network and those relationships that are built for that network. So in answer to your question, yes, there is variability, but this also strays away from the conventional methods of understanding and applying human bias, as it were, to degradation rates of material or age of pipe, or those standard elements. Hopefully that answers the question.
All right, thank you, David. Question for Flow. It was mentioned that a substantial amount of homeowners take action when notified of high water pressure. What percentage of those notified took action?
I don't have the percentage off the top of my right at hand. I remember it was something in like we saw within 7 days. I can share that with everyone, but my recollection is between 7 to 14 days, we saw something between 10 and 20% of homes actually decrease their pressure. So meaning they actually went over within a week or two and either lowered their pressure regulating valve, or in some instances actually installed a pressure regulating valve. Again, sometimes that takes a little bit longer because you actually have to get a plumber out to do some of that stuff. But we know that that does help significantly drive down the amount of leaks that homes are going to have. But I will pull that statistic, and maybe Marianne can help me get that information to the group. I'm sorry, I don't have that offhand.
Okay. Have any utilities that Flow or Flume are working with used the product as an enforcement mechanism for customers to fix leaks? For example, if a leak is identified at a property, do any of the utilities send the customers a letter or notice that they have to fix their leak or face some sort of enforcement against them?
Not in our case. We have not done that at all. I don't know if Eric has a different answer, but not on the Flow side.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have not had that happen either. You know, we really don't want to be presented as the water cop for utilities. I think what we see often in these utilities is some distrust between the customers and the utility in many situations. And when Flume comes into that district, you know, we really are this consumer-focused product that the customers have trust in. And once they install the product, they believe what's going on in the home is true. So once they see that data, you know, once customers actually know that a leak is happening in their home, I mean, nearly 100% of them take action and solve that problem. It's very, very rare that we actually see a customer get notified of a leak and not do anything about it. You know, we have situations where customers are digging up their lawn, trying to find an irrigation problem, and they eventually do. So no, thus far we've not had any sort of fines based on the data. And we'd like to keep it as, you know, a really good experience between both parties.
Can I just jump in here? I think this is an interesting question as it pertains to the last slide that we rushed through in the Flow presentation around behavioral nudge theory, because I think, you know, much as Eric said, we don't want to police people, but what we would like to do is use positive reinforcement to encourage people to take action. So using the carrot rather than the stick, I think, is probably a much better interaction for all of the parties involved, whether it's the utility, the customer, or you know, or Flow.
So I notice we're at the top of the hour. How many more questions, Liam, do we have?
We have quite a few more. I don't believe we'll get to all of them.
Well, let's go, with everyone's indulgence, let's go another 5 minutes at least and see if we can't answer a good number of them.
All right. Okay, next question. Is there any ability to utilize Flume on unmetered connections?
So we do require that a meter exists. The way our technology works is that we're actually reading the magnetic signal inside of the meters. We've had situations where people have actually installed water meters and then put our product on it, which Gabe would probably look at and say, oh my God, why don't you just install Flow then? But we've had people actually install water meters and attach our device to it. But you do need to have a meter in order for a product to work right now.
Okay, we've had a couple people ask if, referring to all three of your companies, if you're active in Canada.
This is Flow. We do sell. We have a number of installations in Canada, and we also have a distributor that is selling our technology in Canada.
This is Flume. We are available on Amazon, and we've had people purchase our product all over the world, actually. So we have a handful of units in Canada. It's not our main focus right now, but yes, we do have some units up there right now.
And from the Reza Tech side, we certainly do have a number of use cases in Canada. We've certainly got a worldwide presence as well.
Okay. How does the Flow device determine which appliance is using water?
We're collecting water flow data and pressure data, and based on the characteristics of the water usage, we're able to categorize the water. So if you imagine, you know, a toilet flush, it's a very predictable predictable pattern that happens in about 30 seconds. There's a sudden surge of water up to around to 2.5 gallons a minute. And we basically, for lack of, to just really keep it simple, we just learn the patterns of what water usage looks like. So irrigation typically runs at a very high flow rate at a very predictable kind of time of day. Showers run at about 1.8 gallons per minute if they're operating at code. If not, it could be higher. And we get it about 80 to 90% of the way there without any homeowner interaction. And then homeowners can, for the ones that opt in and engage with it, and similar to what Eric said about Flume, people love these features. People really do engage with them a lot. And so people can go in and they can correct it if they think something is wrong. And oh, that wasn't a shower, that was a faucet. They can correct it right in the app, and then the device just keeps learning what those different water uses are.
Okay, another one for Flow. Do any of the pilot customers install a second flow on their irrigation system?
Yeah, we do have a number of customers that have done that. I think that there's some great, smart irrigation controller type systems out there as well that are also great for that purpose. But we do have a lot of folks that are specifically concerned with leaks in their irrigation line. And want to be able to shut it off in the event that there was a broken sprinkler head. So yeah, we have a number of customers that have one on their main line going into their home, and then the other one on their irrigation side as well, and can definitely be used in those situations.
Okay. For Flow and Flume, what is the battery life of your devices? How often do you run into problems transmitting data from your devices to your cloud databases?
I'll be really quick and I'll hand it back to Eric. Ours is not a battery operated device. It does have to be powered just using a standard 110 connection. We do have an optional of a battery backup that's available, but we need the power. So Eric, go ahead.
So since our sensor lives in the water meter pit, it does have to use batteries. It does not connect to power in any way. It's self-powered with 4 lithium-ion AA batteries. One of the biggest challenges is how do you keep that very efficient and send data frequently still. So our battery life is about 18 months on average. In situations, it can be up to 3 years if that sensor is actually like in a basement situation where the connection is very, very strong between the sensor and the little bridge that goes in the home. These batteries are replaceable by the customer. We notify them when their batteries go low. In the app, you can actually see what the battery life is. And since it is this kind of consumer-focused product, it's pretty easy just to have them purchase a new set of batteries and get those installed.
Okay. For Flume and Flow, what thresholds or triggers are you using to determine a leak, and how soon after your system flags a leak do you notify the customer?
So in our case, really the only way to definitively know whether or not you have a leak, and this goes back to but EPA WaterSense standards, is by doing a pressure decay test on the water system. And that's where you actually create a closed pressurized environment and you monitor the pressure over a period of time. If the pressure stays constant, definitively you don't have a leak. Whereas if the pressure drops, you do have a leak. That's the only way to be 100% sure. And that's the way that we do it every day. So we run that test automatically in the background. We also obviously sense leaks, using our flow sensor. But that's how we know that definitively whether or not there is a leak. So ours is, I don't know if anything is 100% accurate, but it's as close as you can possibly get to being 100% accurate in terms of leak detection. We typically run our test at times of inactivity, which could be like in the middle of the night. So we're not going to wake people up with those notifications. We'll typically wait till at some point in the morning to notify them if we did sense a leak overnight. So that's how it works for Flow.
So for Flume, we capture leaks happening all the time. Probably the most frequent ones we find are toilet leaks that are happening in the home, and the others are irrigation leaks that are either broken pipes or just a small constant flow because of valves not closing in the irrigation system. The way we're doing this is by analyzing the flow data going through these water meters. And it's interesting because the water meters, they don't have to be incredibly accurate down to a certain flow rate, but they do still spin very, very slowly when there is a low flow leak. And if you're looking at it, you might not even see it spinning, but if you have a sensor on there monitoring it all the time, you're gonna notice a very, very small movement in that meter. We're constantly analyzing that data, and if we see a certain baseline flow happening for an extended period of time, we'll notify customers of that issue, or if there's a spike in a high flow rate, we can notify them of that as well. We don't shut the water off, which has, of course, some pros and cons. So if we notify a customer of a leak, we're not going to give them a false positive by shutting their water off. There is, of course, a situation that, if there is a massive leak and we don't shut the water off, there could likely be some damage. But the vast majority of the time, what we see is that before big leaks happen, a small leak occurs, and we're all about catching those small leaks very early and preventing damage from ever happening in the home in the first place.
So Liam, let's do a couple more questions and then close it out.
Okay. We have another one for Reza Tech. What utility-specific data does Reza Tech need to be able to detect likelihood of leaks in a water distribution network?
Okay, so there are a couple of key data sets, so that's a very good question. It primarily comes down to having some good GIS data, so understanding the characteristics of the network. One, we need to know where the pipeline is, or pipelines, or the network is. Two is having the attribution of that, so as much attribution of that data as possible. So the diameter, the age, the material, all of that is useful because it helps build the relationship of an understanding of the network. The other information from the client would need to be the historic information, so where incidents have occurred in the past, ideally within a GIS environment, so have a specific location attributed to them, but that could also be simply a relationship with pipe segment or some other mechanisms. But when engaging with us, we will evaluate the data and we will then have an informed discussion as to what the expectations of results will be. But fundamentally, from that position of understanding, the results are then put forward and through a systematic approach of capturing data and feeding it back into the system, we start to see a trend of improvement and results get better and clearer, and ultimately the understanding and dynamics of that specific network through the machine learning and effectively our training improves as well. So there's a net improvement with time and data that's been captured, and ultimately as the client captures more data in those specifics as noted before, you get better results. Yeah.
Okay. For Flume, have you ever had any issues with water agencies when a customer adds the device that they would think it's tampering with the meter?
That's a really good question. So we try to be as proactive as possible, and the best case scenario is that we go into a district, partner with that utility, and we work together to co-market Flume to customers in that area, share data, and it's a win-win for everyone. Since we are available on Amazon, we cannot control where all the units go, but we have thousands of units in the field right now. We've only had about 2 situations where a utility actually looks at the sensor and says, oh, that's got to be a magnet sticking on the side of the meter or something that's used to tamper with the meter, and they actually pull it off. Of course, the customer generally notifies us that, hey, someone stole our product, and it's an opportunity for us to actually reach out to that utility, and we prioritize that situation as the highest priority. We contact that utility, we tell them what we do, we generally send them a free unit and say, hey, this is what we do at Flume. This is how we can help you. And it's, interestingly enough, it's kind of becoming a lead generation situation where we now are establishing a partnership with that utility and informing them about what Flume does. So it's really more about education than anything else.
Well, this has been a terrific webinar. Thank you all so very much for your presentations, and thank you and the audience for your great questions. I know we still have some that are unanswered. We will do our best to get answers to those questions from the presenters, and we'll circulate those answers out to the attendees. But I want to take this opportunity to once again thank you all for participating and being part of the webinar, and to encourage you to join us again on June 4th for our next installment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.